All right, let's go over the parts on your drum set. So the snare drum is the center of your kit, so I'm going to start with that one. Let's start with the heads. So we have two heads. We have a resonant head and a batter head. You play the batter head, and the resonant head helps to control the tone of the drum. On a snare drum, we also have hoops or rims, which are these metal circles that hold the head on. We have them on both sides, as you can see. These are die-cast hoops, but there are also non-die-cast hoops available, like the ones on all of these other drums, beside the bass drum, because that has wood hoops. The lugs are these metal pieces that hold these rims on the drum, and you can tension them to control the tone. You might be wondering about this wire system we have here. Those are snare wires, and they're connected to the strainer, which is this funny thing right here. And as you can see, you can control these to tighten these snare wires on the bottom, and that makes a snare sound when you play the drum. If those are not tight, you don't have a snare sound. That's why this drum is called a snare drum. So, I'm going to put the snare drum down right over here and move on to the bass drum. So, on a bass drum, we usually have wood hoops, not metal. We have wing nuts that hold on the bass drum legs or feet, depending on which part you're looking at. So we have those on both sides, right here as well. We have a mounting system here to hold the toms on, which I'll get to later. The middle part of any drum, I need to dust this off. I'll show you how to do that later too. The middle part of any drum is called the shell. And shells are usually made of wood, but sometimes they're made of metals or other materials as well. Let's put the bass drum down and move on to, let's go to the toms. So on a tom, like this one, we have tom holders, which I'll show you later how they connect to the bass drum, but they do. Another wing nut. If we go to our kick pedal right here, I kind of explained this earlier, but we have a spring mechanism that controls the tension on how tight this is. You have the foot board, which is where your foot goes. And then this thing right here, when you turn it, it tightens this and it'll fit onto the bass drum hoop. But I'll explain that more later as well. Let's go over to our hardware. So here we have our tom mounting arms, which I'll show you again later, fits onto the bass drum and holds the toms in place. We have our cymbal stand, which needs tightening. So if you want to tighten it, you can tighten this or loosen this. This is an alternate version of a wing nut. It kind of only has one little wing or arm that you can turn, but it does the same thing. Though, this one has something cool on it too, doesn't it? This has a specialized holding device to hold on a floor tom. So this is kind of a unique thing that has two wing nuts on either side, as you can see. And you can hold on various things like toms or cowbell mounts or additional cymbal stands or really whatever you want to attach to your cymbal stand. We have, as I mentioned, on our hi-hat stand, we have a footboard here with a bendable bottom apparatus that fits into these two holes right here, like this. And that's how your footboard stays in place. We have our hi-hat post on the top half, which I mentioned earlier. It has a washer and a cymbal felt. underneath it. And so this washer fits onto the top of this thing, and there's a wing nut here that controls, I don't know if you can see this or not, you can bend up that washer by turning this. And most hi-hats have some kind of mechanism like this to control the tilt of the bottom hi-hat cymbal. On top of that, we have our cymbal felt. I'll explain more about that later. Every cymbal stand, like this one, has cymbal felts on it. And those are there to kind of protect and mount your cymbals without damaging them. Underneath those felts, if we were to take this off, we also have a little plastic thing that actually holds your cymbal on. So you can take these felts off, and you're left with this little plastic device. And this is actually the frame that you put your cymbal onto. So you can take these off, put them back on, put your cymbal felts on, and that's how that is set up. Last but not least, we have the clutch that I mentioned earlier. This fits onto the hi-hat post and holds your top hi-hat cymbal on. And I will show you how that actually fits on shortly. And lastly, we have our seat, or throne. So this one is a hydraulic throne. So it has a lever here, and if I push it up, it'll raise the seat up, kind of like an office chair you might have seen. If I sit on it and press this up, I sink down. So that's how my seat works. Some have spinning devices, like a giant screw. So if you turn it to the right, it'll sink, and if you turn it to the left, it'll raise up. Others have different mechanisms, but they should come with instructions if you get them at a store. So those are the parts of the drum set.